Hi, today we'll be talking about the game Meek against Morphy, and it took place in Mobile, Alabama in 1855. So Morphy was one of the best masters. Actually, he was the best American master at the time, and Paul Morphy was also a lawyer. So he ended up playing Alexander Meek, and Meek was a politician, also a lawyer, and they happened to cross paths. And Morphy played with a lot of uh, individuals that were known to be great in politics because he was a lawyer. Here, Meek starts off with the opening e4, which is of course great because it takes up space in the center. So e4, e5, knight f3, and now Meek goes for the e pawn that obstructs his own e pawn. So this pawn is basically the bane of White's position. He has to get rid of it so that he can advance to e5 and take up even more space. Obviously, he wouldn't do that first. He probably played e4, but the whole point is that this pawn gets in the way of everything. So Morphy defends this pawn with knight c6, and now Meek plays d4. So this is called the Scotch opening, and it's meant to take away this pawn. So after e takes d4, notice that one of the things that's going on here is that Meek, by playing d4, also develops the pieces because now he's bringing out the bishop somewhere. You could bring it out to e3 or even g5 at some point. And basically, Meek gains a tempo like that. Now, if Morphy captures the pawn, he's wasting a tempo. Like if Morphy captured with e takes e4, that's one tempo that Meek uses to play bishop to c4. And that's exactly what happens in the game. So people could say that Morphy was down a tempo, but the thing is that even though Morphy spent one tempo capturing this pawn, Meek has to spend one tempo back capturing this pawn as well. Or even with queen takes e4 after the knight's gone somehow. Maybe bishop's b5 and then takes, but I don't see that happening. Usually the knight takes back. So he doesn't have to take back the pawn. It's not like a rule that once you capture a piece you have to take it back, but this is a central pawn and it's very cramping. Like if there was a pawn on a5, it's like a pebble. No one wants the pebble, but this is more like a piece of gold. You want to get rid of this pawn. You want to keep this pawn if you're black. So Morphy played bishop to c5 so that he can protect this pawn, and also this develops a piece. So even though Meek is up a tempo right now in development, Meek's gonna have to spend one tempo capturing this back. Now, Meek plays knight to g5, which is dubious because, like I've talked about in my Anderson videos, back then everyone played for a premature attack except for the masters of the time, like Anderson, Morphy, and he's obviously attacking bishop takes f7 or knight takes f7, but this isn't really a threat. One of the lines I like to play here is, well, actually, this is different. Let's see. I wonder if I can play d5 here. So like after e takes d5, then knight e5, but I don't think that's gonna work because it's going to. Right. So Morphy here plays knight to h6. And this defends any threats on f7, and it also develops a piece. So Morphy has essentially caught up in development because Meek had to move his piece twice, and he could have actually just moved it to knight takes e4, but of course he can't do that now because of the bishop c5 problem. So Meek might be down a tempo. If he doesn't end up capturing this pawn, it'll be even, but he's got to capture that pawn at some point. So the game continued, knight takes f7, and the whole trick behind this is that Meek is going to play queen to h5 after all of the piece trades here, forking the bishop and the king. So let's see what happens. So knight takes f7, knight takes f7, bishop takes f7, king takes f7, queen to h5, check, g6, queen takes c5. Now here is kind of the issue, is that now Morphy is definitely caught up in development, and probably more so than Meek, because Morphy will artificially castle. Basically, he'll move the king to f7, bring the rook to e8, and then bring the king out there. And here's the problem. Meek had 2 pieces developed, and now they're gone. Oh, why am I pointing here? Here. And here. He had 2 pieces developed, and now they're gone. So basically all the tempo he got from the opening is all gone. And also the queen can be attacked after d6. So that even gives us Morphy more tempo. And essentially this queen's going to be attacked a lot, and that's going to help Morphy gain tempo. But something else to examine is at the position after knight g5. Morphy could have also played knight to e5, and the tempo problem would be even. Now this fails because after knight takes f7, knight takes f7, bishop takes f7, king takes f7, queen to h5, check, g6, queen takes e5. There's no knight on c6 anymore. Instead, the knight's on g8. Also, this knight on c6 is protecting d4. So even after knight to f6, queen takes d4, white is definitely better. White's going to play knight to c3, maybe bishop g5 to pin the knight. He's going to castle, and at that point he can even castle queen's side and bring out both rooks at the same time to the middle. So black would be in trouble. This is not a good line for black, playing knight to e5. Like I said, it doesn't even help your tempo situation. So let's go back to the position after 9d6. So this is great for Morphy because the knight here protects any queen takes d4 ideas. So the queen goes to b5, probably trying to get back home. And actually in the game, after rook to e8, which is a logical move, you're artificially castling. Essentially, Morphy has castled by this point. And he's also got a knight out. Morphy is up, I would say 3 tempo. 1 for castling, 1 for bringing up the knight, and 1 for having the pawn in the middle, which needs to be recaptured at some point. So rook to e8, queen to b. Now look, this is an artificial castling, but he's still up a tempo. If it was real castling, then he'd be up 2 tempo. But he still has to move the king back, so it's 1 tempo only. Anyways, queen to b3, d5. So Morphy takes some space in the middle, and also this pawn can't take because there's a pin. Also playable was king to g7, covering bishop to h6. That's why you can't play king to f8, because of bishop h6, and then king e7 is the only move, and then that's kind of getting ugly because the rook blocks the way. So the rook is blocked. So queen b3, d5. Also bishop e6 was interesting, and then knight takes, queen takes b7, and then queen d7. So black would be mobilized. Or even interesting is that after, here's an interesting line. Bishop e6, queen takes b7, and now bishop d5, protecting the knight and threatening rook to b8. Also, you're going to win the pawn the next move. So castles, and now rook to b8. So this is brilliant. And now the pieces are attacking the queen side. But Morphy wanted something more. He wanted to exploit the position of the king. And here I would have just castled. But the problem is that rook takes e4 was kind of annoying. So, but black has a better move into bishop e6, which is safer, because the problem is that after rook takes e4, white has knight to d2. So bishop e6 is safer, so if pawn takes d5, then bishop takes d5, getting even more tempo. So also this pawn is unpinned, so it's threatening d takes e4, so it's definitely a stronger move. Now the game continued f3, and now knight to a5, so unpinning this pawn. And now queen to d3, d takes e4, f takes e4, so this king is becoming a little exposed. And now Morphy goes for a cute little combination of queen to h4 check. Now there's a dual attack on this pawn. g3, rook takes e4 check, and now king to f2, and now queen to e7. So Morphy's got a deadly pressure on this file, and no piece can come onto it right now. So that is choking for white. Also, look at this undefended diagonal, the c8 h3 diagonal. So queen to e7, knight to d2, logical attacking the rook and developing a piece, but that covers the bishop. I mean, what else are you gonna do? Maybe after queen to e7, Meek had bishop g5, so that if queen takes g5, which is a distraction, and queen takes e4, and whoops. So that's another interesting thing to consider, these distractions. Now the line continued. The game continued knight to d2, rook e3 now. Not obviously queen takes d4. He played queen to b5, and not queen to d4 because of rook e2 check, followed by mate in a few moves like king to g1, and then rook to e1 check, and the only move would have to be queen to, well actually sorry, king to g2, and then queen to e2 check, winning the rook. Now he could defend with the knight by playing knight to f1, but then bishop to h3 is a nasty move, and that wins the knight and probably the game. The only move would then have to be maybe queen to f2, and then king to g8. Just not king to g7 because of this bishop to h6 check resource with a discovered attack on the rook, and saving the game. So also there's no mate because the queen and rook defend on f8, so that's another thing. So let's go back to the game after queen b5. So Meek wants to keep this queen on the diagonal. Now queen b5, and Morphy's going to distract him by playing c6. Now the only square is queen to f1, so Meek plays queen to f1. Now bishop to h3, another distraction, getting off the diagonal. And this is exactly what happens. The queen is forced off the diagonal, and now there is a very good combination. There's two moves that you could do here, and they're both basically the same maneuver. So it's basically a maneuver you're looking for. You're not looking for a move specifically. So what's the maneuver that could win the game for black, and black resigns? So I'll give you a minute. So the maneuver is you're moving the rook to f8 and the king to g8. And in the game I would have played king to g8. but Morphy decides to go for rook to f8. It's the same thing. So after rook to f8, only move is then knight to f3 to block that discover check / checkmate. But after knight to f3, king to g8 anyway, and you're winning the rook and the queen, and the game is basically over. But there's probably a stronger move, and maybe bishop to g4. Bishop to g4 is better. So that was a threat. But there's no defense. The game is totally over. Well, actually, the problem is that the bishop attacks on e3, but then after queen takes e3, it's mate. Because this is called bonus mate. So the bishop and the queen prevent any diagonal escape, but then this is covered, so it's totally mate. So the bishop can't even take that. So that's just brilliant. Yeah, so one more thing to discuss is the position after bishop to h3. If queen takes h3, then rook to e2 check just like before. And now king f1, rook to e1, knight to f1, and now queen to e3 check. And this knight's pinned. So king to g2, and now rook to g2 checkmate. So, I mean rook to e2 checkmate. So that's just a dynamic way of using all the pieces, and Morphy was brilliant at that. So if you like this video, make sure to give it a like. And donations are welcome. Feel free to donate. The link is in the description. And I'll see you in the next one.